The etymological meaning of the word depression is an act of pressing down, a sinking of the spirits, interestingly, to put down by force or to conquer. To conquer requires two energies, the conqueror and the conquered. Psychological depression, therefore, may be taken to be a depressed state, a state of functioning in a lower capacity than what might be considered the norm. A pushed down by some other force, by life or by oneself. Also a state of division. Where in life does this pushing down, sinking of the spirits, or putting down by force occur? It is in the psychological area of mind, is it not? And to investigate this area further, we may venture into the worlds of thoughts, feelings, and even for some, though not for all, of spirit. This is surely the spirit referred to in the etymological explanation, being pushed down. And so depression is a pushing down against an inner movement of thoughts and feelings. Depression, for likely everyone, is an undesirable life state. No one likes to be depressed. It is also a very common state to human consciousness. According to the World Health Organization, around 300 million people in the world suffer from continuing depression. This number is likely a drop in the ocean. For a certain stigma exists in our society towards mental health, and so a vast number tolerate feelings of depression without ever seeking so-called professional help. The global antidepressant market in 2020 was worth $13.5 billion. And that figure is a drop in the ocean of money spent seeking cures for this psychological ailment. $13.5 billion. Add to that number every psychologist's bill, psychiatric bill, hospital stay, rehabilitation visit. Add every alcoholic drink and every drug taken to escape. Add the cost of those most suffering, and we come to a figure, both financial and in very real daily life terms, which is almost incomprehensible. Depression is a serious issue for humanity. We have been educated since children to live with problems. Actually, more than educated. We have been programmed to live with problems. To a young child, the learning of a language is a problem. As the child grows, every diverse subject added to, of little interest to the child, so fascinated in the beauty of the world they have been born into, becomes an added problem. Pleasing the school teacher is another problem. Pleasing parents, the same. And the answer to these many juvenile problems is offered by society in a scripted authoritarian-led compliance. Do what is required by those who ask it of you to solve these problems, unwantedly placed onto your young life. The solution of the problem of the many subjects to be learned is found in the mental concentration in the process of memorizing information rather uninteresting to the child and rather useless to life. But this is the problem presented, and this is the successful approach offered to meet the problem, to which every child must comply. As one problem is solved, another is presented in a stream of greater complexities, leading from the simple tests of juvenile school to the most advanced PhD students, and the degrees perhaps taken in later adult life. Few enjoy the actions of such laborious study unless the area of study is one of deep interest, which is never the case in early years, and more often than not the case in later. As highlighted in the preceding video to this one titled Letting Go of the Past, and which may be accessed by clicking on the link at the end of this one, any mental procedure entered into by a human brain over and over again for a period of years will become automatic to the functioning of that human brain. The designers of our compliance-based school system obviously well recognize this fact. Meeting problem after problem to be solved during our many educational years, lasting somewhere between 1 and 2 decades, our brains begin to function in a groove, the groove of living with and seeking to solve problems. Many other are the damaging aspects of our programming education, living within memory, the unquestioning obedience to an external authority, the act of competing rather than cooperating against peers, the acceptance that life is a self-interested endeavour and that the greatest of all achievements in life is reaching the top of the heap. These are all the underlying patterns of our systems of so-named education, which become inner systems to our lives. In our adult brains, which unsurprisingly have a high tendency in life to meet depression. A brain programmed to problems lives with problems. What is of interest here is that a brain programmed to live with problems is absolutely incapable of solving any problems. If the brain is constantly occupied with problems, it is inwardly engaged, and an engaged brain is not free, and a brain which is not free, a brain which is constantly occupied, is not free to solve problems. On top of this all, we all live in the past. We live in memories. Memories are the movements of our thinking. This is a stored, limited inner bank of knowledge consisting of all we have been told in life and all we have previously experienced. Vast as this inner bank may be, and it is minuscule in size in comparison to the totality of life, to the totality of possible experiences which may be experienced. No one can or has experienced everything, and so to seek to solve a problem from thinking is to seek to solve a problem from a limited bank of information, which is to seek to solve a problem in ignorance of the information I do not possess, by virtue of never having passed through the life experiences required to meet the problem. Acting and thinking, therefore, is to act in ignorance, for knowledge is never complete, and so knowledge acts in ignorance of that which remains unknown, which would change all courses of action if it were. This perhaps sounds complex, and perhaps this is complex. It is advisable never to accept the word of another. It is insisted upon here. The light of all understanding in life is only to be found by yourself, and depression, like every other psychological issue, need be understood, not treated. To treat depression is to seek an answer to this life disability outside of the disability itself. The answer to the problem may be found in the problem. Take time. Consider the words. Consider what the words are pointing to, and come to see the truth or falseness of the direction being pointed towards. It does not matter if I am speaking truth or I am the biggest liar. If you take the time to do this, you will come to your own understanding of this issue, and your own understanding holds the only possible potential to change your life. To boil this down into simple terms, every action a so-named depressed mind takes in life is depressed action, for inner depression is the root driving force of all actions. Every action a confused mind takes leads only to greater confusion. What then in God's name will ever come to offer relief from depression? Surely, the only thing possible to accomplish this task is the ending of all depression. Our reliance on pills, on therapies, on escapes galore, our putting up with, living with, and accepting the advice of others, calling themselves professional or not, are all looking in other places than directly at the depression. Does that idea scare you? Does the thought of remaining with your depression bring you to fear? And yet, for all your escapes and all your so-named treatments, I wonder how many of you can place your hand on heart and honestly state that depression no longer holds a place in your life. To be free of depression is to meet a joy for life unburdened. Do you hold joy for every living moment of your life? What does it mean to remain with depression? We could add to depression every undesirable inner state of human consciousness, to bring that reported number of 300 million large enough, more likely to include the minds of all of humanity. Fears, guilts, worries, violence, aggression, intolerance, hatred, hurt, pain, bias, the constant seeking of pleasure, which too often comes to meet pain. The instant desire for more and more to fill an inner emptiness, a hole inside, which becomes progressively larger through the very act of attempting to fill it. The finding of a love in your life, a partner, one you can hold on to, a relationship which provides a security and continuity, pleasure and stability. The torment of that partner leaving you, denying your desired pleasure, or even dying, inevitably comes to reveal the inadequate nature of our life attempts to cover over our psychological inadequacies. As soon as the distraction is removed, the true nature of our inner state is revealed. We are lost, confused, depressed, and isolated people. Despite the protestations of church, this is no matter of a judging God and original sin. This is a matter of our having been programmed to meet life as deeply as we have through a societal process named education, which sets our minds into a pattern which becomes arduous to break free from. Coming back to the instantly recognizable fact that all actions from a confused mind must be confused, the understanding begins to present that there is no action in life I can take, or any other can take, which can resolve my inner confusions. If every movement I make is arising from confusion, such movements can only lead my life into greater and greater misery. I cannot trust even myself, let alone the therapist, who mostly themselves generally need therapists. The magic elixirs offered, professing a chemical imbalance in the brain, their magical potions can rectify. I may escape. I may come to occupy my conflicted inner nature in an immeasurable number of ways, place a screen in front of my life for days on end, hide in relationships, suppress by using drugs or alcohol, which will worsen my already frail condition. And yet, whatever I do, depression, conflict, confusion, fear, and life uncertainty is patiently waiting to once again enter my life as soon as the covering veneer departs or is removed. And so what's the answer? The answer is in the problem. Undesirable or not, these states of mind are these states of mind. Can I remain with my depression, my violence, my anger, my sense of indignation, my fears, worries, depressions, and inner pains? Can I begin to become familiar with what actually is, without seeking to escape or seeking to even solve the problem? Who or what is it which seeks to solve this problem? Is the observer of the inner disturbed nature of a disturbed mind something so completely different than the disturbed mind itself? We have been conditioned to see life in so many ways. We have been conditioned to accept images of how our minds function, which is in a state of constant division. We rarely come to question this outlook as reliant on authority as we have so been obediently trained to be. The divisions we have acted on and accepted as present within human consciousness are those of subconscious and conscious, of a thinker and thoughts. Within a troubled mind of any description, the thinker is the psychological entity who seeks to bring to rights his or her perceptions of thought. I am not thinking the way I should. I feel depressed. This I component of thinking is what seeks to alleviate itself from the inner pain. Is this I truly something separate from what it perceives and seeks to escape? Is the thinker a totally separate entity to other thoughts? This is very important to understand, not through words, but through direct perception of this inner division within all of human consciousness. If I, psychologically, am divided from what I see, then a potential for inner conflict so common to all of humanity is ever present to our lives. If I am of the same nature as what I see, then conflict may end, depression may end, fear may end, sorrow may end, and life may come to hold great meaning, never found in any modality of escape or in a mind of continuing suffering. Division is the required ground for all conflict to erupt. A divided house can never stand, and division may be the root problem for so many of our inner and outer conflicts and ailments in our world. These are all inevitable if the fact is we are divided inwardly between thinker and thoughts, for the hiatus, the gap, the divide between the thinker and the thoughts necessitates a constant vigilance, a controlling, a suppressing or a running away from, and an escape. And our lives, inwardly and outwardly, become a battlefield of mere existence rather than a joy found in being alive. Look within. Is the thinker truly divided from the thought? Or does thought, in fantastic pre-programmed, brainwashed scholastic style, produce the thinker? Is the thinker an imagined identifying continuity present, which the structure of our fleeting movements of thought have been manipulated into conceiving? Does the thinker think thoughts, or do thoughts create the thinker? You can never come to meet the challenge of this perplexing issue through thought. You must awaken a new ability to your life, the ability to look without thought. If I want to see anything very clearly, I must be very quiet inside, for every inner movement becomes a distraction, distorting that which I wish to see. Begin by seeing the relevance of this question. If thought and thinker are actually divided, conflict is inevitable. This is how you likely live today. It is how you have likely lived every day following your successful graduation of a brainwashing education. The brain was guided into seeing itself as a thinker of thoughts, the thinker being identified to given birth name. You can learn to look to verify if this pattern merely accepted to date accurately meets the actual phenomenon taking place visibly within the brain's moment-by-moment movements. If the fact is that there is no thinker outside of thought, and I am obviously suggesting here this be the case, take away all thoughts, where is the thinker? And if no thinker ever existed, then who or what is trying to escape a depressed or fearful inner state? The mind may come to find it is undivided, and so cease trying to act upon itself to better its perceived condition. And this cessation of all actions may be the stopping, the total cessation of the depressed or confused mind needed, bringing to an end all confused actions, and so ending all movements of continuity of that which needs to end. Depression is not a problem to be solved. Depression is nothing to be treated. It is an awakening to be met.